3 minutes. That was all Jontay Porter needed to stay on the floor. On March 20th, 2024, the Toronto Raptors two-way player checked into a game against the Sacramento Kings. He recorded 0 points, 3 rebounds, and 0 assists. Then he left, saying he felt sick. Outside the arena, the real action was already happening. According to the NBA, someone connected to Porter had placed an $80,000 parlay at an online sportsbook. Every leg of the ticket depended on Porter finishing below certain statistical lines. If it hit, the bet could have paid $1.1 million. It never did. The sportsbook froze the wager. Licensed betting operators and a market integrity monitor alerted the league. The NBA investigated and concluded that Porter had shared confidential information about his health, limited his own participation for betting purposes, and wagered on NBA games through another person's account. The league banned him for life. That is not a bad beat story. It is not a conspiracy theory from an angry fan. It is the NBA's own finding. And it exposes a problem much larger than one player. Legal sports betting has a serious defense. Adults should be allowed to decide how they spend their own money. A regulated sportsbook creates records. It can verify a customer's age, monitor unusual wagers, freeze suspicious activity, and turn evidence over to leagues or law enforcement. Porter's $80,000 ticket was caught precisely because the legal market left a trail. In this case, regulation did something useful. It saw the smoke, but it did not prevent the fire. The size of the market explains why this matters. According to the American Gaming Association, Americans placed roughly $166.9 billion in legal sports bets during 2025. Sportsbooks reported nearly $17 billion in revenue, while state-regulated sports betting generated about $3.7 billion in taxes. Those numbers need context. The $166.9 billion is known as the handle. That is the total amount wagered. It is not the amount the industry kept. The same dollars can move through multiple bets, sometimes over and over. The nearly $17 billion in revenue is closer to what sportsbooks retained before operating expenses. At the market level, that works out to a little more than $10 of sportsbook revenue for every $100 wagered. That does not mean every customer loses 10% on every bet. Some bettors win, some cash out, some stop. The business works because the market is enormous, and the decisions repeat. A sportsbook does not have to beat every customer tonight. It has to keep the betting cycle alive. And legal sports betting no longer depends on getting people to Las Vegas. It does not require a casino floor, a weekend trip, or even another human being. The app can reach customers anywhere, during Sunday Night Football, in the middle of March Madness, or on a lunch break, while sitting on the couch with the game already on. The casino did not have to get closer to the customer. It had to become the customer's phone. So what exactly is a sportsbook app? The obvious answer is a digital bookmaker. It posts odds, accepts wagers, pays winners, and keeps a margin. That is true. It is also incomplete. A modern sportsbook app is more than a place to bet. It is a payment system, a live pricing engine, a promotional platform, and a notification service, all operating at once. And a marketplace capable of turning nearly every part of a game into something with a price attached. Years ago, a casual fan might have bet on who would win. Now the menu can include a player's points, rebounds, assists, passing yards, receiving yards, strikeouts, three-pointers, and dozens of combinations built from those outcomes. Then come the live bets. The game starts, but the market never closes. The line shifts in real time. A push alert flashes. A player catches fire. A quarterback limps off the field, and the odds change before the next snap. And the app offers another decision before the next commercial break is over. The game did not get any longer. The space between bets simply disappeared. A casino has walls, doors, and a parking lot. A phone removes all of them and changes the rhythm of gambling. And eventually, the customer physically leaves. An app has none of those boundaries. It can appear beside the score or alongside an injury update, then launch a countdown during the 2-minute warning, offering a new line before the broadcast has even finished discussing the previous play. On an NFL Sunday, the customer is no longer being offered one question: who wins? The app can offer odds on who scores the first touchdown, how many yards a quarterback throws for, how many yards a running back gains, which team scores next, and the second half spread. Then bundle it all into a same-game parlay. The commercial break becomes a checkout lane. And because the product sits inside the same device, carrying your group chats, bank app, fantasy lineup, and game alerts, the wager does not feel separate from ordinary life. It arrives inside it. To understand why Porter's case matters, you first need to understand two terms at the heart of modern American sports betting: props and parlays. A prop bet is a wager on what happens within a game, rather than on the final score. You can bet on whether a basketball player scores over or under a set total, whether a pitcher records more or fewer strikeouts than projected, or whether a running back finishes above or below the posted yardage line. A parlay bundles several bets into a single ticket. The attraction is obvious. And a relatively small bet can produce a much larger payout. The catch is just as important. Every leg usually has to hit. One failed condition can wipe out the entire ticket. That is what made the Porter wager so powerful. The bettor did not need Toronto to win. He did not need Sacramento to cover the spread. He needed one player to finish below several statistical lines. And that player knew more about his own health than the public did. That is an information advantage no ordinary fan can model. It also changes the smallest possible unit of corruption. Fixing an entire NBA game would be difficult. It would require control over too many players, too many possessions, and too many variables. But a player prop does not necessarily depend on the whole game. Sometimes the entire wager turns on one player, or just 3 minutes of action. Then the industry reaches for one of the most powerful words in American advertising: free. Free bets, risk-free offers, bonus bets, no sweat promotions. The language matters because free lowers the emotional cost of starting. It does not sound like a trip to a casino. It sounds like a coupon. Download the app, create an account, make a deposit, place the first wager, receive promotional credit. Try again. The entire journey can happen before kickoff. But promotional betting credit is not necessarily the same thing as cash sitting in a checking account. The terms may require those promotional funds to be wagered before they can be withdrawn. Ohio's current sports betting rule is revealing. If a sportsbook describes an offer as free or risk-free, the customer cannot be required to incur a loss or risk their own money simply to use that wager or withdraw its winnings. The rule also allows promotional funds to carry playthrough requirements, as long as the customer's own deposited money and cash-funded winnings are not locked up. Think about what that means. A state regulator had to define what the word free is allowed to mean, because in this business, the fine print is not a side issue. The fine print is part of the product. A sportsbook does not need a bonus to make the customer rich. It needs the bonus to make the next decision feel smaller. $10 becomes a token. A loss becomes promotional credit. A second bet feels less like spending money and more like using something before it expires. And expiration is useful. It creates urgency. The customer is no longer asking, "Should I gamble?" The app has quietly replaced that question with another one. Do I really want to waste this offer? That is a very different decision. None of this means every promotion is deceptive. It does not mean every bettor loses control. And it does not mean a regulated sportsbook is the same thing as an illegal bookmaker. The legal market did, after all, catch Porter's suspicious wager. But that same market has also created a product with almost no physical distance between impulse and action. The pitch is entertainment. The mechanism is repetition. And the business does not require every customer to go broke. It only needs enough customers to come back. Jontay Porter needed 3 minutes. The next case wasn't decided over a full game, or even a full at-bat. It came down to a single pitch. In November 2025, federal prosecutors unsealed a case that made Jontay Porter's 3 minutes look almost generous. The defendants were Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz, 2 pitchers for the Cleveland Guardians. Clase was a relief pitcher. Ortiz was a starter. According to the indictment, they also became the center of a betting scheme built around something much smaller than a game: a single pitch. Prosecutors alleged that Clase gave bettors advance information about the type and speed of pitches he intended to throw. On some of the allegedly rigged pitches, he threw the ball into the dirt, far enough outside the strike zone to make the result easier to predict. The bettors then placed more than 100 straight bets and parlays on pitch speed, pitch type, and whether the pitch would be called a ball. Ortiz allegedly joined the scheme in 2025. Prosecutors say he agreed to throw balls on 2 predetermined pitches in exchange for payments of $5,000 and $7,000. Across the alleged scheme, the bettors won at least $460,000. Clace and Ortiz have pleaded not guilty. The charges remain allegations, and no jury has found either man guilty. That distinction matters. But so does what Major League Baseball did next. One day after the charges were announced, MLB and its sportsbook partners placed a nationwide $200 cap on wagers involving individual pitches. They also removed pitch-level bets from parlays. The restrictions covered operators representing more than 98% of the legal U.S. sports betting market. A policy change is not a verdict, but it is an acknowledgement of vulnerability. MLB said these bets carried a particular integrity risk because one player could determine the result without changing the outcome of the game. That is the central problem with microbetting. Traditional game fixing is hard. To control the final score, you may need several players, an entire half, or dozens of possessions. You have to hide the manipulation inside a complicated contest watched by coaches, teammates, officials, cameras, and millions of fans. A pitch-level wager changes the math. The player does not have to lose the game. He does not need to surrender a home run, or even change the outcome of the at-bat. He only needs one small betting market to settle exactly as anticipated. The game can remain legitimate while the wager itself is compromised. And because the pitch looks ordinary, a slider in the dirt, a fastball just outside, the moment can disappear into the box score. That is what makes these markets attractive to customers. They create action between the action. It is also what can make them fragile. The smaller the market becomes, the fewer people may be needed to control it, and the person placing a legal bet from a couch has no way to know whether someone else already knows what comes next. That information advantage does not always begin with the athlete. Sometimes it begins in the locker room. In April 2026, former NBA player and coach Damon Jones pleaded guilty to 2 wire fraud conspiracies. One involved illegal, rigged poker games. The other involved sports betting. In the betting case, federal prosecutors said Jones used private locker room information, pre-release medical information, and lineup decisions from multiple NBA teams to help place fraudulent wagers worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The sportsbooks were not accused of working with him. According to the Justice Department, legitimate sportsbooks were among the victims he cheated. That is an important distinction. A regulated book can have rules against inside information. It can investigate unusual activity. It can close accounts and hand records to federal agents. But rules do not guarantee that every customer enters the market with the same information. By the time an injury update reaches ESPN, a team reporter, or a push notification on your phone, the market may already have moved. The public sees breaking news. An insider sees a price before it changes. For a casual bettor, the app may feel like a level playing field because everyone sees the same line on the same screen. But the screen does not show who knew first. Combat sports make that problem even more personal. On November 5th, 2022, UFC fighter Darrick Minner entered the octagon with a serious knee injury that had not been disclosed to Nevada regulators. In the hours before the fight, the betting line moved sharply against him. Minner lasted 67 seconds. After throwing a kick, he appeared to aggravate the injured leg. Shaylon Nuerdanbeki finished him moments later. In 2025, the Nevada State Athletic Commission suspended Minner for 29 months for failing to disclose the injury. His teammate Jeff Molina received a 36-month suspension. A Nevada official said Molina had direct knowledge of Minner's injury, failed to report it, and placed significant bets on the fight. This was a regulatory case, not a federal criminal conviction, and a fast loss does not automatically prove that a fight was fixed. Odds move for many reasons. Sharp bettors find value. Rumors spread. Markets overreact. Favorites lose. But that uncertainty is exactly the problem for the person betting in public. The ordinary customer cannot look at a rapidly moving line and know whether it reflects smart analysis, a leaked injury, or information that should never have entered the market. He only knows the price is changing, and the clock is running. Now move that same system from professional sports to a college campus. In January 2026, federal prosecutors charged 26 people in what they described as a nationwide bribery and point-shaving operation. The indictment alleged that the scheme involved more than 39 players across more than 17 Division I men's basketball teams. More than 29 college games were allegedly fixed or targeted. The proposed bribes usually ranged from $10,000 to $30,000 per game. Prosecutors say the fixers often targeted players on underdog teams and players for whom the payment could meaningfully supplement, or even exceed, their legitimate name, image, and likeness opportunities. The scheme was built around the spread. That matters because point shaving does not always require a team to lose. A team favored by 10 can still win by 6. The crowd celebrates. The coach gets the win. And in the standings, it looks like any other victory, but the favorite failed to cover. For a bettor on the other side, that is all that matters. A player does not necessarily have to throw the game. A missed free throw, a late turnover, or a few possessions played below normal can affect the spread without changing who advances. That is why point shaving can hide inside an otherwise believable result. One detail from the federal case captures the pressure. According to prosecutors, a recruited player's game was tied at halftime in March 2024. Jalen Smith, one of the organizers named in the case, messaged the player and complained that the game was supposed to become a blowout. He accused the player of costing him money. Smith pleaded guilty in March 2026 to bribery, wire fraud conspiracy, and wire fraud for his role in the scheme. Federal prosecutors say he helped recruit, manage, and pay players, and helped arrange large wagers against teams containing bribed athletes. Other defendants remain presumed innocent unless proven guilty. The scale of the operation described by prosecutors was not a few friends making side bets. They say the fixers wagered millions of dollars. Players collectively received hundreds of thousands in bribes. When the bets hit, people allegedly traveled to college campuses to deliver cash. Think about the structure. A message reaches the player, a price is agreed upon, and the wager is placed through a sportsbook. The game begins. And somewhere else, a bettor watches a college athlete not as a person, but as a position in a market. The legal betting industry did not invent bribery. Point shaving existed long before smartphones. Inside information existed long before apps. But mobile betting changed the distribution system. It created more markets, faster settlement, immediate access, and a nationwide audience capable of placing money on details that once would have been too small to sell. That does not mean every new market is corrupt. It means every new market creates another surface that has to be protected. The irony is difficult to miss. Federal prosecutors say fixers were offering some college players between $10,000 and $30,000 to influence a game. At the same time, the legitimate college sports business was building its own financial relationship with sportsbooks. At one major public university, a new bettor using the school's promotional code was worth $30 to the institution, not $30 in tuition, $30 for becoming a gambling customer. And that is where this story goes next. Because once a university can earn money when someone starts betting, the line between educating a student and acquiring a customer becomes much harder to see. A college basketball player misses a free throw. For most of the sport's history, that mistake had a familiar cost. The miss drew groans from the crowd, anger from the coach, and followed the player all the way home. Now there may be another consequence. Somewhere, a stranger's same-game parlay just lost its final leg. The stranger does not see a 20-year-old student. He sees the player who cost him money, and sometimes he sends the bill. In a 2025 NCAA survey, 36% of Division I men's basketball players said they had received social media abuse related to sports betting in the previous year. 29% said they had met a student on campus who had bet on their team. Among football bowl subdivision players, 16% reported negative or threatening messages, and 26% said they had encountered a student who wagered on their team. Nearly 6,800 athletes from 153 Division I schools took part. The relationship between fan and athlete is changing. Fans have always been emotionally invested in the outcome. Betting turns that emotion into direct financial exposure to a single player's stat line. That difference matters. If a player finishes one rebound below the over, the bettor may not see an athlete who had a bad night. He may see someone who took money out of his pocket. Of course, the player never accepted that debt. The bettor created it. But the message still lands in the player's inbox. During the 2025 men's and women's March Madness tournaments, the NCAA's monitoring program reviewed more than 1 million public posts and comments mentioning players, teams, coaches, officials, and other tournament participants. Its AI system flagged 54,096 items for possible abuse or threats. Human analysts confirmed 3,161 as abusive or threatening, opened 103 investigations, and referred 10 matters to law enforcement. Those numbers reveal the darker side of the market, but the same report also found evidence of improvement. Across all tournament participants, sports betting-related abuse fell 23% from the year before. The NCAA said monitoring, education, reporting, and enforcement were all part of its response, although the decline does not prove that any one measure caused it. The lesson is not that regulation failed outright, but that the problem grew serious enough to require its own threat monitoring system. And this is where the strongest defense of legal sports betting deserves to be heard. A regulated market creates evidence. The suspicious $80,000 parlay connected to Jontay Porter was frozen. Licensed sportsbooks and an integrity monitor alerted the NBA. The league investigated, concluded that Porter had shared confidential health information and limited his participation for betting purposes, and banned him for life. When federal charges later exposed the integrity risk around pitch-level baseball bets, Major League Baseball and its authorized sportsbook partners capped those wagers at $200 and removed them from parlays across operators, representing more than 98% of the legal U.S. market. MLB explicitly said those markets were unusually vulnerable because a single player could determine the outcome of a one-off bet without affecting the game itself. An illegal bookie may have no reason to report a suspicious wager. A regulated operator can preserve records, stop a payout, and cooperate with leagues and investigators. In several cases examined in this story, the legal system did exactly that. But catching corruption inside a game is not the same as catching collapse inside a customer. A sportsbook can detect a cluster of unusual bets on one player. Can the system recognize when a recreational bettor has crossed into chasing losses? Or distinguish a profitable customer from someone gambling with the rent money? And if it can tell, what is it required to do? Those questions matter because the people asking for help are getting younger, and the way they gamble is changing. According to the National Council on Problem Gambling, more than 31,000 people contacted the National Problem Gambling Helpline every month in 2025. Nearly half were between 18 and 34. Online and app-based gambling accounted for 31% of reported concerns, up from 23% the year before. More than 73% said financial stress was one reason they reached out. That does not mean every caller used a sports betting app. It does not prove that mobile sportsbooks caused every financial problem, but it shows where the pressure is moving. The problem is no longer confined to a casino floor. It now lives on the same device people use to pay bills, move money, text family, check scores, and watch highlights. That device removes friction. Most technology products are designed to eliminate friction. In gambling, some friction is a safeguard. Traditional gambling came with built-in pauses, the drive to the casino, the walk to the cashier, ATM limits, the trip home, and the wait between games. Each one creates a moment in which a person can stop. A phone can remove nearly all of them. The customer does not leave the sportsbook. He closes it, and the sportsbook can ask him to come back. That does not make every notification predatory. It does not make every promotion deceptive. And it does not mean every adult needs the government to make decisions for them. But it changes the regulatory question. The old debate was whether sports betting should be legal. The new one is what happens when legal betting becomes ambient. Always present, always accessible, and woven into the way fans experience the game. Always nearby, always priced, and always ready for the next tap. The best-case future is not hard to imagine. Legal sportsbooks replace part of the underground market. Suspicious bets are detected. College player props are restricted. Promotions become clearer. High-risk customers receive meaningful interventions before the damage becomes catastrophic. States use gambling revenue to fund treatment, research, and public education. Adults who want an occasional bet can do so inside a market with records, oversight, and consequences. The worst-case future is just as easy to imagine. Games are broken into smaller and smaller betting moments. The line between watching and wagering disappears. VIP treatment reaches people who need interruption, not encouragement. States become dependent on tax revenue from the behavior they are supposed to regulate. Athletes carry strangers' losses into their direct messages. And responsible gambling becomes one small button underneath a product designed to make every other button easy to press. Which future wins will depend on rules that sound technical but have very human consequences. The questions are now more practical: whether customers should be allowed to fund accounts with credit, how quickly they can redeposit, which college player props should be permitted, and how VIP accounts are monitored. Regulators must also decide when operators are required to intervene, whether promotions, manufacture, artificial urgency, and how much companies must disclose about the sources of their revenue. And are states willing to collect less money if stronger protections reduce betting volume? None of the 10 cases in this story proves that sports are broadly fixed. They do not show that every bettor, or even the typical bettor, develops a gambling problem. Legal operators are not all the same. An illegal bookmaker extending credit is not the same as a state-licensed sportsbook. A university referral agreement is not proof that the university caused a student to gamble. And a threatening message is the responsibility of the person who sends it. Those distinctions matter. Without them, an investigation becomes propaganda. But the distinctions do not erase the pattern. A so-called free bet can serve as a customer acquisition hook. Once the bettor is inside the app, even a single pitch or one player's stat line can become its own market, one that may be manipulated without changing the outcome of the game. A locker room detail can move the line before the public hears the news. A college athlete may be offered more to alter a point spread than he expects to earn legitimately, while a university can profit simply by steering a new customer toward a sportsbook. As losses deepen, an illegal bookmaker can keep raising the limits. And a bettor can record more than $142 million in winning wagers, yet still end up over $40 million in the hole. And a player can open his phone after a loss and find strangers demanding repayment for bets he never asked them to make. The average bettor believes he is predicting sports, but he may be entering a market shaped by faster information, insider access, product design, commercial incentives, and his own urge to win back what he just lost. He is not only betting against the line, he is betting inside a system built to offer another line immediately afterward. That may be the most important change. Sportsbooks once sold access to an outcome. Mobile sportsbooks can sell decisions all the way there. The final score still matters. But the money can now be made during every timeout, injury update, pitching change, and commercial break before it arrives. The casino did not disappear. It learned how to look like the rest of your phone. Adults should be free to spend money on entertainment. That principle matters. But a product capable of accepting a new wager every few seconds is not ordinary entertainment. So where should regulators draw the line? Are mobile sportsbooks closer to media apps, casinos, alcohol? Or, in some respects, financial platforms engineered around rapid, repeated risk? There may not be one answer for every customer or every state. But pretending the phone changed nothing is no longer a serious position. If gambling is creating financial stress, secrecy, or the feeling that one more bet will finally get you even, free and confidential help is available across the United States 24 hours a day.